Hello, everyone. Happy Saturday, and welcome to another Saturday stream with me, Derek Clifford, the CEO and owner of Elevate Equity. We're so glad that you're here today. Thank you so much for joining us. And today we've got a very interesting topic. I know it's one of those topics that maybe many of you guys have been wondering about or you've been hearing about. It's an LLC and land trusts. What are they? How are they used? And why even go through the effort of learning about what these things are, right? So first of all, I want to tell you an LLC is called a limited liability corporation. And don't be intimidated at all. It's actually a pretty fairly simple structure, and it's a corporation that you can set up. And the purpose of it is to contain business entities. So instead of either you having personal title on a property that you would own, you'd put it in the LLC's name, and then the LLC would be the technical owner of the property, and then you would own the LLC. So in essence, it's like a corporation or something that can hold things for you, okay? And in addition to that, it offers some legal protection too. Like, if someone sues the owner of the property, they would sue the LLC instead of suing you, which is always a good thing, because if they end up winning in court, then they can take all the assets in the LLC alone and not you alone, okay? Because you have a lot of stuff like your personal residence, your personal possessions and all that stuff. So it would really be great to be able to segregate your personal from your business life. And that is what an LLC is meant to do. So it sounds very complicated. It's actually not that complicated. And really all it is just an entity that you can form, and it's state to state. So it can be done in either California, Indiana, or anywhere. And it's specific to those laws in that state. You don't necessarily have to have Indiana properties in an Indiana LLC. You can have California properties in a Wyoming LLC, or you can have Florida properties in a Missouri LLC. There's just a lot of ways that you can do it. And it's just all kind of up to you and what kind of legal ramifications can work, because they all have different types of features and characteristics, little kind of nuances, right? And then there's land trusts. These are a little bit more complicated, okay? Land trusts are actually entities that are formed where you do not own any of the title. You don't have it in your name. You actually appoint someone that's called a trustee to hold title for you. You still have all the control, but an individual in some state, somewhere else, or wherever you decide to incorporate the land trust, that trustee will be able to receive all the documentation. They hold title on the property, and whenever there's a business decision to be made, they always refer back to you, the beneficiary of that trust, right? And so there are some pretty interesting characteristics about land trusts, and just like LLCs, they're specific to each individual state, okay? Now, why would I go through all of this to kind of give you a high-level overview of what LLCs and land trusts are? Well, the very wealthy have a mantra, and their mantra is own nothing but control everything. And this is exactly how they do it. Of course, I must give a disclaimer here, because I'm no accountant. I'm not an asset protection person, and I have no education or background around that myself, other than what I've learned by practically doing and applying and understanding it from talking from those folks as a real estate investor. So please take this as educational purposes only, please. So as I said, own nothing, control everything. And what I really mean by that is, while you have property and while you hold entities and hold businesses and have all of this stuff going on, if you're able to control it but not take the liability of actually owning it, that is what the ultra rich do, okay? Because if someone has an issue or a problem, they have a segregation between their business life and their personal life. And the better you can control all of that, the easier it is going to be for you over the long term to be able to manage all of those assets, okay? So now that we've gotten kind of that high level thing over the way, okay, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into some of the details, right? So let me go ahead and share my screen again with you guys so that you can take a look. And let's see here. There you go. So now you should be able to see what an LLC actually looks like. So we're going to kind of back up since we talked about from the beginning. An LLC is an entity that can hold properties, they can hold businesses, they can hold other assets. And so essentially what it is an LLC can be either a California entity, an Indiana entity, a Texas, any kind of state. And doesn't necessarily have to be the state that the property is held in, but at least that's what I hear. But it probably makes the most sense from an income and a tax point of view as well. So these are things you're gonna have to talk through with your accountant. But it's something that is important to understand, that's how an LLC works. Now, there is a whole nother level to this as well. And you can actually have LLCs own other LLCs, okay? And that's where it gets even more interesting. Let's say that you have a property in Indiana that's owned by an LLC, and then the owner of that LLC is a holding company that owns all of the LLCs. That's the ultimate in being able to kind of bring all of your investment portfolio under one roof from a tax standpoint when you're doing your planning. It also offers a little bit of liability protection in case someone sues this company. So let's say a resident inside here has a trip, slip, or fall, and for some reason the insurance company denies the claim, and then you're on the hook for whatever it is on the 6 figures or 7 figures, whatever it is. That's just a completely worst case and completely theoretical scenario. But if that does end up happening, then the owner of that property is going to be ending up in court, and that court would involve this LLC. Once they get if they were able to win in that LLC, then this owner would have to take accountability for it. And then you would be the owner, of course, behind this, or maybe it would be your trust or something else behind that. Either way, it offers several levels of protection. And, even in talking with some of the professionals and some of the people that I've known in the real estate space, sometimes that even doesn't offer too much protection either. So it just depends on what state you're in, and it depends on the specific situation. So again, that's something for your legal attorneys and for your team to help you out with. But that is something that may end up coming through that you should be aware of, okay? So those are LLCs. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about was land trusts. And I don't want to get too far into this. And again, this is something that I pulled from online. It's called from Napkin Finance. There's 2 types of trusts. There's revocable trusts, which can be changed, and then there's irrevocable trusts that cannot be changed. And I'm not going to get into too many of the details here, because the bigger picture is I want to explain to you how investors at different levels use combinations of land trusts and LLCs in order to manage their portfolios, and then why you in specific may want to use one approach or the other, okay? And so to make this quick, let's just go ahead and jump into that right now. Normally, what most newbies do, this is what it looks like. There's one person and you have single family homes that you just carry in your own name. And that kind of completely violates what we were just talking about, how the ultra rich, they end up owning nothing but controlling everything. And by that meaning they don't hold title on anything. But this is probably the easiest way to get set up, because the financing is easier. When you're buying these single family homes, if they're owned by an LLC, then the financing is a little bit more difficult and it's more expensive and costly. So doing it this way, by starting off with just you holding things in your name, is okay, as long as you have a really good umbrella insurance policy on top of the property policies as well. Again, make sure that you talk with your accountants and your insurance folks and your attorneys as well. But generally, this has worked well for me starting off. If you were to just own properties in your individual name and then slap on an additional umbrella insurance policy to give you another layer of protection in case someone sues you or something happens in each of these individual homes, then there's another layer between you and them, okay? You should have the property specific insurance policy, but then you'll have an umbrella as well to help you cover in case anything else happens, okay? So this is the setup for newbies, and it can work for people that are just starting up. And then as you evolve, you may move into something more like this, where as a beginner, now you're starting to have LLCs underneath you. And so this is kind of like the very basic, easy principle. And when you have anywhere between 1 to 3 or 5 properties, this setup that we were just talking about will work just fine, right? Because you don't have so much exposure out there. 3 or 4 properties, it's fairly unlikely that you're going to get sued, but that's just the way that's what it is, okay? And when you start getting more and more properties, I've only limited it to 3 here to not crowd it, but as you get up to like 5, 10, or 15, it may start making some sense to start pooling some of those properties into LLCs directly. That way, if something happens with one individual property, the damage is contained to just that LLC. And because you have a business with so many properties, you should be able to sustain having the operating costs to do the taxes and do all those things for the LLCs. And you should have like a business setup where you have some time carved out, and it's a legitimate business that's functioning. Okay. Now, an advanced setup is the same setup that we had before, except I've drawn boxes around things to help make it a little bit more clear as to what's an LLC and what's not. Okay. Having LLCs in specific properties. Let's say you own a couple of properties that are pretty expensive and have a high value and are either high risk, or it's just a multifamily property that just maybe have more issues, right? You can slap that one into its own LLC, and then you can maybe pool in together a bunch of houses in their own LLCs as well. So you can have multiple LLCs in there. And then talking about a holding LLC to kind of unify your tax and your asset planning strategy is going to help you out a lot. There's a lot of advantages for doing this, but normally you can have these limited liability companies in the state specific for whatever properties, whatever state these properties are in. And then the holding LLC can be there can be a specific reason. Sometimes people choose Nevada, people choose Wyoming, and people choose Delaware. And for those specific reasons, because they have specific characteristics for holding the LLC. Like in Wyoming, they offer some pretty interesting things. I have a Wyoming LLC, and essentially what that allows you to do is once you establish the LLC, they don't really keep track of where the ownership goes or who the owner is after you've established it, as long as you provide annual reports and you pay the fees each year. So that provides an extra layer of being anonymous, because when that happens, if you own it for many years, it's going to be very hard for a lawyer to prove that the owner is still the correct owner that was filed initially when the LLC was created. So that's one of the things. There's plenty of reasons, and so you can do that research all on your own. You can go onto Google and find out more about why a Wyoming LLC or Delaware or Nevada LLC makes sense. Okay. And then the optimal setup, which is one that I'm looking to implement myself, is a combination of land trusts and limited liability companies. So an LLC will not provide you anonymous protection. You will not be anonymous. People can look up your LLC once they find out who the owner is, and then find all of the properties that you own under that LLC. So if you name your LLCs in a similar fashion, then someone has the potential to understand your entire portfolio, right? Let's say that you call an LLC, Investment LLC 1, right? And then you create a second LLC called Investment LLC 2, and then another one, Investment LLC 3. Well, a legal team is going to be able to understand what that means. And so what they're going to do is they're going to search on county records for the sequence of that, right? And so if they see a pattern, they're going to go ahead and start looking for that. What really does make the most sense is to be able to put each individual house inside of a land trust. And the reason that we like land trusts is because land trusts, there's only one document that gets filed with the state, okay? And you hold the contract, or you hold the actual articles of formation for that land trust. And so the land trust gives you more flexibility. It's very cheap to file. I think it's like $50 depending on the state that you're working in. And so you can get a land trust set up very cheaply, and all you have to do is pay the trustee to hold title for you, because generally they'll do that for a fee. Or if you have a family member who is in that state for that specific land trust type, like a Florida land trust, then they can hold title for you inside the land trust structure. And if any of the correspondence, since they're holding title, any of the correspondence gets forwarded over to them, then they can forward it over to you to make a decision, and you'll tell the trustee what to do, and then the trustee will direct whoever needs to know what to do onto that, okay? But the land trusts, they allow you to protect each individual property on their own. Because if each land trust is easy to file and it's cheap to file, then all you got to do is do one for each individual. It doesn't cost very much. And then have the owner or the beneficiary of that land trust, not the trustee. The trustee is the one who holds title for you, right? And so that'll be the same person. But the beneficiary, the person that's making the decisions, or the entity that's making the decisions, is your LLC. So that way you have the protection to being anonymous, because people can't look up your LLC and find, like, all they're going to find is when they're searching for things from their property, they type in the address, they're going to find a land trust title or whatever you end up calling it, right? And you could be very deceptive. And there's no way that they can find a link between all of your properties, because each of the land trusts are holding title, right? And so they're different, they're named different trusts. Even though the trustee is the same, they don't know that, right? The person who's making the decisions is all the same person, but the name of the land trust is different, so there's no ties to any of your property. But on the back end, the owner is one LLC, one mega LLC. Okay, and then you can repeat that structure many, many times, and that way you get the dual combination effect of having land trusts, LLCs working together to help provide you with the ability to be anonymous, and then also to be protected on the liability side with the LLCs. Okay, so there's a level of control and ownership that you have to kind of manage depending on your experience level, and so that's pretty much where I wanted to be with this. So setting up LLCs and land trusts are actually pretty simple. So if you want to do that on your own, it's pretty easy. I know that for Indiana, you just go to a site called InBiz, and you can go in there and create your LLC, and it takes about 5-10 minutes to do that. So if there's a hurdle in your brain about actually physically setting up an LLC for you, please don't be scared about that at all. Every state has a different process, but generally, like all the states that I've created LLCs in, it's fairly painless. You just have to make sure you understand what your structure is. And if you want to do it absolutely right, you can hire a lawyer to help you do that as well. And they'd be happy to go in and help set that up all for you, of course, for a fee. And it's going to be probably 3 to 4 or even 5 times more expensive than if you did on your own, but at least it'll be done the correct way, and you'll probably be walked through the process a little bit better. Okay. And once you do one, it's a lot easier to do the next one with or without the lawyer. Okay. And then land trusts, as I was talking about before, are a little bit more complicated. They are easy to set up and they're cheap to set up, but there's a lot of nuances behind them. And so I would encourage you guys to do a lot of research. We, back a couple of years ago, we actually bought a course called Land Trusts Made Easy, I think, by this guy named Randy Hughes, and he's Mr. Land Trust. And so you can look him up, and I think for a couple $100, you can get all of his material, and he'll give you actual templates for what land trusts look like and the different advantages and disadvantages of owning, of having real estate or having land trusts in each individual state as opposed to others. And so it's really interesting material, and I highly recommend that you go in and do that. And after making that investment, you should be able to very cheaply and quickly create your entities. And when you create your land trust, it'll be easy to be able to kind of work. I think you get some time with him as well to work on all of that. And going through that material will help you get set up really well with some of your asset planning as well. So, and then you also, the last thing you need to do for a land trust is to set up a trustee appointment. Make sure you understand who your trustee is going to be. And usually it's like a legal office somewhere. And so you have them manage it for you for a small fee of somewhere around like $100 a year or something like that. And so it's really, really easy to be able to do that. So I just wanted to pass that out there because for me, I'm using or wanted to use Florida land trusts because they have such crazy, like, good protection on the liability side and also on the anonymous side. And so imagine if someone tries to sue me, right, that's living in a property in Indiana and it's held by a Florida land trust, and then the beneficiary of the Florida land trust is a Wyoming LLC. That's really confusing. And most times lawyers who are trying to go down that route, they have to fly all the way out to Florida, right, to sue the trustee. And then in Florida law, the only thing that the trustee can do if they win in a law court, in a court of law, is to reveal who the who the beneficiary is, and the beneficiary would be another LLC in Wyoming. So it would mean that lawyer would have to chase us around the country to go to each individual state in order to make their case made. And in some cases, it may not be worth the time and the effort and the energy on top of the insurance policy that you may or may not have on top and the umbrella policy. So that being said, I hope that that's given you some food for thought. I hope it's useful. And if you guys have any questions at all, please reach out. I'm here for you to help you get started or further continue your real estate investing journey. And if you want to have a free commercial real estate, how it builds wealth and how it preserves wealth for you, please go into the link in the description and you can download that for free. You just got to type in your email address so we know where to send it to and your name. And we'd love to get that off to you. And you can always listen to us on our podcast, on YouTube, on iTunes. It's called Elevate Your Equity. It's wherever podcasts can be listened to or found. You're welcome to go there. Or you can just go to our website at elevateequity.org. And yeah, we're just looking forward to hearing more from you. So hope this was insightful and useful. And we wish you guys a fantastic start to the weekend and have a fantastic week as well. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.